Good morning, everybody. I've promised a short meeting and already added to the agenda, so there we go. Actually, it's an exciting day looking down at Clarence and Kat. We actually move a matter off all our collective desks, but also achieve good transparency and accountability through the process. So obviously the primary role is to deal with our annual report and indeed the very exciting climate statement that we will release as well. However, I have had a short chat to Lance and the team, and we do have a matter of risk crystallised, which is the elevated, I think is the correct term, Mairi, elevated arsenic levels in the Waikato River affecting at least Hamilton and Auckland, and it's received a fair degree of national publicity, and I suspect will over the next couple of days at the very least, or at least until the matter is resolved. So in a very impromptu and verbal way, Lance and Andrew apologises that he can't be here. He needs to be focusing on local waters done well at Waikato. He's offered Mairi to give us a short briefing on, as I say, risk crystallised during an event management and process, Mairi. So can I leave it in your hands to brief us, please?
Absolutely, and I just want to acknowledge Fiona Sutton, who's our Head of Operations and Process, and she's also the Incident Controller for our Incident Management team. So as we communicated last night, we've had some elevated levels of arsenic identified in Hamilton's treated drinking water. So the results have exceeded the maximum acceptable value for arsenic as stated in the drinking water standards. It's really important to understand that arsenic is a normally occurring or naturally occurring element in the Waikato River system, and it is something that we routinely monitor for, and that is how we identified that there was an issue occurring. So for many decades, our monitoring has shown that the level of arsenic in the Awa and in the treated water is relatively stable, and our treatment processes have been really effective at removing it. So it's really important to understand there are different types of arsenic, and this is where it gets a little bit sort of complex. So I'll try and keep it nice and simple. Our plant is very adept at removing one type of arsenic, and what has happened, what appears to have happened is that the proportion of the different types of arsenic in the Waikato River has changed, and so now it's more a different type of arsenic, which is harder for our treatment plant to actually remove. So we're in the process of trying to respond to that and change our processes and optimise our processes to be more effective at doing that. Elevated arsenic has been identified in other water suppliers that also source water from the Waikato River, so that's your Water Cares and Waikato District, etc. Waikato Regional Council is taking the lead role in investigating what may have triggered that change in the quality of the Waikato River. So we are working really closely with all the other Waikato River water users, as well as Waikato Regional Council and our regulator, Taumata Arawai. So we're in regular discussions, we're sharing information and ideas, etc. So that side of things is working really well. At the moment, we don't know what the cause is, and so that means we don't know how long this will continue for. But in the meantime, we've set up incident management to manage the response and all the communication and reporting that's required. We're undertaking extensive sampling and analysis right throughout our water network, right from the source right to the tap. We are trialling modifications and adjustments to our treatment process to try and maximise the removal of arsenic to get that down below the maximum acceptable value. We're also investigating operational and capital interventions that might be needed in the short term as well as in the long term, just in case this is a permanent change in the water quality. And we're communicating with different water users and regulators and sharing information, as well as working with our key water users and stakeholders within the city to make sure they understand what that means for their business and their operations. So we'll try and keep you as up to date as possible as things progress.
Thanks, Mairi. I would take a chance for members to ask questions, I suspect.
Chair, can I say a bit that Mairi might want to add to it? So there's testing happening right along the Waikato River, so right from basically Port Waikato to Taupō. and all the agencies are working together on that, obviously under the auspices of Regional Council and Te Mata Arawai, who's the regulator. So I think, you know, everything's being thrown at this just to find out what's going on. It sounds like it's something that's naturally occurring. But as Mairi said, you know, we're going to have to see how long it goes on for and do have to adapt in the longer term.
No, thank you for that, Lance. I hear the message, which is what I've taken from this too.
And the other thing is that the water is still safe to drink. I think we need to really reiterate that.
Yeah.
Arsenic poisoning, you know, if people want to get into that, is these are very, very low levels, and also that you're talking about, you know, it has to be chronic poisoning over many, many years. So
Yes.
I think you know, we just need to make sure that people don't get the wrong end of the stick on that.
Yes, I've appreciated the comms. I do wonder whether there is a standards question here, that we do understand what is the test. How it's elevated but it's safe, I think, was the word that I heard publicly. So, and that is what I understand the situation to be. Do we have questions here for Mairi or Fiona? Oh, sorry, Paula, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I've been a bit quicker over the last few days, but I'll be in a bit later. I think I'm fine. Just in terms of the potential with the arsenic, it's not, I understand from my regional council hat and way back when these incidents happen, what's involved, but it's not only a safety risk for people, which is very minimal, if nothing. It is actually the perception and reputation risk that we've got to manage with our comms going forward, and people will naturally worry because it's quite understandable to have something that you know you don't fully understand, especially something with the emotive connection of arsenic. So I do wonder, what else are we doing? We certainly don't want to own the problem when it's a whole of river problem. It's above and beyond us. But what are we going to do to assure people? We've put a press release out, but that's it so far, isn't it?
So we'll be talking with a lot of our key users and as many of our user groups as possible to make sure that they understand the impact of it. But I think it is about clear communication and messaging, and Nicole can probably help a little bit more in that area.
Morena. Yes, we have. We've emailed key stakeholders last night, and we're adding to that list today. A media release was sent out, which was joint with Watercare and Health New Zealand, and we have another statement we're issuing this morning from Te Mata Arawai, who have been instructed to take lead on this. There's an additional comms meeting with all partners at 11 a.m. where we're re-looking at what next. That includes Waikato Tainui, Waikato District, Watercare, Te Mata Arawai, Health New Zealand, Waipa and others. So we will have more of a plan after that meeting this morning. We were on social media last night. Commentary was as expected, but some really good education in there as well, and we will keep that up as we go.
Thank you, because I think I'm concerned about the reputational damages and risks based on fear of the unknown. You talked about key stakeholders, but the general public are likely to pick up this on some resident pages, social media, and blow it all the wrong way and get, you know, so we do need to be mindful of the fact that that's where it goes, things like this. One other question though, in terms of you're working with all those lead agencies, that's really excellent that those top agencies have been able to come together so quickly. So credit to whoever was coordinating that work. If the arsenic levels are, say, a geothermal event or something, which is quite common, and they're sustained over a long period of time, will we have to do something different with our water treatment, something higher, greater, potentially even more costly?
Yes, so that's something that we're looking at the moment. So we're implementing as many refinements to our process that we've currently got to maximise the removal of arsenic, but we are getting experts in to help us identify what are the options if this continues on, and we may need some either capital or operational interventions or changes to our process. So that is definitely something that we are looking at pace.
Thank you. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we're here for other business today, but I can appreciate this is important. Is there any other questions folk would like to raise? Maxine.
Thank you. I understand that the sample that showed the problem was taken last week, but the results of it were only just released or discovered. I wonder, in terms of further and future sampling, and in the interests of public confidence, is there a quicker way than a week to be able to get that
Yes,
results back and understand the levels?
so for that particular determinant, that is the standard turnaround time for a laboratory to analyse and report back on that is 5 to 10 days, working days. So that that is what we normally obtain. At the moment, we've been in discussions with our laboratory, and they are turning around the results within same day, basically. So we put the results in the morning, take samples in the morning, and generally early afternoon we've got results. That comes at a cost. Obviously, they've got to dedicate all their machines and all their lab staff to enable that quick turnaround time. So it's for a long-term monitoring program that wouldn't be appropriate, but for a short-term emergency response, we can get those very quick turnaround times.
And is it reasonable that Hamilton City Council bears the cost of that additional?
At the moment, yes, until we understand what the cause of the event is. As Lance said, it could very well be a natural occurrence, and so that is a cost that we need to bear as needing to provide that water treatment process.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You had your mic. Okay, you're fine. Okay, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. It was a good question from Councillor Maxine. Mairi, thanks so much for being here this morning. What other testing happens, I guess, in a more immediate way? Do we have other testing in our treatment plant so that so that if there was something that suddenly occurred on one day that we'd know that day?
So we have quite an extensive monitoring program and a number of different varieties of determinants that we're testing for, and also methodologies of how we test them. So we have some parameters that are tested continuously, and they've got online instrumentation that measures them on a second-by-second basis, up to grab samples for things like for metals, which generally have you don't see rapid change in the concentration or level of those. So the methodology and the frequency of testing is very much associated with the risk to the process and the risk of meeting a compliance target or a public health and safety target.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it's probably, if I could, members, draws conclusion. I suspect there is going to be a lot more discussion around this, Mairi, and it's actually the start of the incident. I would, from a risk committee perspective, just note, I think probably 4 or 5 things I've heard, which, if I can say from a Hamilton-centric perspective, because clearly this is broader than just Hamilton perspective, I'm hearing about 5 things that we are doing, which I think are really important. Nicole, Nicole's gone. Thank you. We've talked about comms, and clearly that has already been in play, and in fact is ramping up, and is reflecting that this is a sort of, well, it's 2 regions at least at the moment, isn't it? Those that are using the Waikato, which includes Auckland, are affected, and I'm hearing coordinated comms, but particularly coordination with Te Mata Arawai. And I'm conscious that what I understand, we have been absolutely best practiced in keeping Te Mata Arawai informed as we are obliged to do this. So that's of great credit. You have stood up an incident management team. So in terms of Hamilton throwing resources at this, you could counter me on this one, I guess, Mairi, but in effect, you've got the right resources in place to be able to deal with this matter, which is tremendous. I've heard also that you are maximising the testing, including the regime of daily testing with daily results coming back so that we can provide publicly as much information as we can about this. And I think associated with that, you've indicated that the potential change in the composition of the arsenic. I have had a briefing on this from Andrew, and I'm not quite certain I'm using the right words. You are looking to maximise the effectiveness of your actual treatment options now to try and bring it down, regardless of whether a source is ever identified as far as this is concerned. And I think I go back to that point that not only the comms, but more generally coordination is both being done regionally, clearly with Auckland, and also close association with public health and with Te Mata Arawai as really the lead for standards as far as that's concerned. That gives me some confidence that Hamilton is doing this in the right way. So thank you for that. Appreciate that you and Fiona came here at very short notice, Nicole as well. And I know many of you, rest of you, will be affected by that. So thank you, you guys. Appreciate that. I've just proved myself to be the worst chair in Hamilton's Audit and Risk Committee history by not doing the karakia, by not taking apologies and all the stuff at the front. I got excited that we're actually dealing with risk real. So I wonder if I, with your leave, if I could... Okay, look, I think for the sake of time, I had better short-circuit it, and I think we all have to go straight into the apologies. I do note, Ewan, you're obviously here when I was told that you wouldn't be here, and we do have Paula here, even though we had lateness. So that's, although I see Paula's gone, I think perhaps we should just note that she could be in and out. And I have an apology from Mark and Moko.
No, I'm here.
Thanks, Paula. Appreciate that. No, so we'll take that. So really, Moko and Mark. Moko and Mark are the apologies. You've moved that, Ewan. I'll second that. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. The agenda has already been messed up, but we are now back into the proper form of the agenda. I would make the presumption, but are there any interest members need to declare in relationship to the agenda? There aren't. It's good. I have not been informed of any public forum, which then brings us to... am I? Thank you. And I'll second that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. So look, let's deal with item 5, which is the final approval of the annual report and indeed the summary. And I suggest we get a couple of people to the front. Good to have the auditors at the front, probably James and Sarah, whoever else needs to come to the front, please come so that we can make this an effective meeting. Clarence, Kat, you need to come too. There's room over here. You don't have to just sit there. I'd like to suggest we get relevant people around the table. Yeah, that probably those are probably on. There you are. Invited to the top table, Clarence. I think there's a biblical story about that. So you're just meeting the test, which is well done, Clarence. Sarah or. Both Sarah, I'm going to say one of you. I tried to double vision. Sarah, either Sarah. I'm probably safe to say Sarah. Can you take us forward, please, and I'll be right. Thank you.
Yeah, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm very glad to finally be here to present our annual report. And this is Sarah Mundy, who is here to representing the strategy team, who leads the non-financial service performance reporting. So attachment 2 is the standard representation letter to the auditors regarding compliance of the financial statements with the accounting standards, which we request approval to be signed by the Chief Executive and the Mayor on behalf of Council. As yet, there are no modifications to the standard letter. The appropriate representations have been obtained from the relevant members of management, and we would recommend the signing of the letter. So attachment 3 is the star of this show, the annual report. There has been no change to the balancing the books results since the end of year reporting at the August Finance and Monitoring Committee, with the balancing the books deficit on page 195 of Diligent remaining at 35 million against a budget of 16 million. Following the presentation at the Finance and Monitoring Committee, the land revaluation was completed and booked with a $49 million gain on revaluation flowing through other comprehensive revenue. So that's on page 194 on Diligent. This equates to a 4.1% gain on the land assets, and 40 million of that sits in parks and gardens. So this is a non-cash gain and has no impact on depreciation in future years because land is not depreciated. There are no other significant changes since reporting to Finance and Monitoring, and the commentary on the year-end result remains accurate, and therefore I do not intend to repeat that. There have been some minor changes to wording and results to 2 non-financial service performance measures since the first draft of the annual report that was distributed. I would like to point out a few items of note in the financial statements to assist with the understanding of the inclusions and exclusions within the result. I will provide the relevant page numbers in Diligent for your reference. Significant work was completed over the non-financial performance measures, 58 performance measures, of which 45 met target, 10 did not meet target, and 3 had no result due to independent data not being available. The statement of cash flows, page 198 in Diligent, the net cash flows from operating activities excluding capital revenues was 43 million. You can also see this in the whole of council FIS on page 286. This is where you can reference my previous comment at Finance and Monitoring regarding the operating surplus of 43 million against depreciation of 108 million in the statement of comprehensive revenue and expense. Therefore, 62 million of renewals that we are not saving for, with the NZTA funded portion of that decreasing with the drop in funding. We paid 353 million for asset purchases. Capital expenditure net of capital revenue was 268 million, which was funded by 205 million of additional debt, with the remainder being funded out of cash in hand and the operating cash surplus. The cash capital deficit using the Standard & Poor's formula is a capital deficit of 203 million against a forecast 225 million. On note 29, the provision, page 258 in Diligent, these are the items that we have made an allowance for in the result, but for which there has not yet been a cash payment. Note 31, contingencies on page 264. These are the items which do not meet the threshold for recognising an allowance in the result, but which we are aware that may require settlement in the future depending on outcomes of various events. These are the types of events that we need to ensure we have sufficient capacity to meet in the future without impacting long-term sustainability. Note 35, financial instruments, sensitivity analysis. So that's page 281. So this describes the interest rate sensitivity on a movement of 100 basis points or a 1% movement in interest rates, which may be of interest to you in deliberations going forward, as this is the impact on council of movements in interest rates. Note 36, events after balance date. There are no events after balance date that have affected the financial statements or are required to be disclosed. And that is essentially the summary of the key items that I would like to point out. Attachment 3 is the summary annual report, which is simply a condensed version of the full annual report. Following the completion of the annual report and audit opinion, we will conduct a post-audit evaluation of audit performance and efficiencies, and this will be presented at the next SHRAC meeting in December. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate that. That's a very helpful run through it. As you say, the star of the show is near completion. Just for the committee's benefit, I had a short meeting along with people like Sarah and Gary with Clarence and Kat, I think it was the 21st, about a week ago, where we received verbal clearance and from the auditors in terms of the annual report with the assurance, if it's the right word, that we would have an unmodified, or some people would say a clean audit report. And so I understand, Clarence, that if we are in a position to recommend to council that this report be adopted, letter of representation signed, you will be placing unmodified or a clean audit report on this annual report, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Brilliant. So that's good news. And I take your point, Sarah. We'll all naturally, with Clarence, have a debrief after the event in terms of actual process for getting here. So with that, members, it really is for us to have a short debate and question time for clarification, either from the two Sarahs or indeed from Clarence and Kat, in terms of particularly moving to the recommendations that we adopt. I wonder if folk have questions or comments at this stage they'd like to make. They don't. Look at that. That's brilliant. Sarah, you've covered off probably the key things that was of interest to me, so thank you for that. Oh, no, I forgot Carol. Sorry, Carol, I was a bit quick off the mark, was I? Carol, we're in your hands. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Look, I thank you to the team for pulling all of this together. I guess one of my questions, and you did touch on it a little bit, Sarah, was around events subsequent to balance date. And I guess there will be a slight gap between us recommending these statements to council today and council actually signing. Is there anything envisaged that is likely to happen during that period that would require subsequent event disclosure?
There's nothing known as present. The committee may be aware of this slight updates that we've received on the risk pool disclosure. As yet, there's nothing that would indicate that we actually have a subsequent event which is going to change anything in the financial statements, but that unless we hear something from them, we have no information to make any other assumptions.
And remind me the date that we will adopt.
3rd of December.
Sorry?
3rd of December.
3rd of December. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Was there anything else you wanted to ask?
No, thanks.
Brilliant. Okay. I don't want to make this look like extracting teeth. I think we've had a very good report. We're probably pretty close to looking at the motion. Just a couple of comments and summary from me. One, thank you for raising the letter of representation. That is really important. In effect, if we don't sign, Clarence won't sign. And so the letter of representation on both the annual report and the summary are ones that Lance and Paula sign on our behalf. So it does just warrant a very short look at that. Essentially, we are asserting that we have maintained all our internal processes. We've provided all information that Clarence and Kat need to have to fulfil it. We have informed them of any concerns around fraud or impropriety, and in effect, if there's anything that is being left uncorrected, it's not material. So on that basis, there are probably just a couple of questions I want to ask and confirm. Sarah, I think you have intimated that in terms of management supporting Lance and Paula signed this, there is a series or there is internal back-to-back letters of representation provided by relevant management. Is that correct? And they have all been signed. Great. Okay, that's good. The letter doesn't state that there are any uncorrected misstatements, so I presume any differences between ourselves and audit were corrected.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. Oh, that's good. Well, in that case, I'm very happy that those letters in themselves be signed. And thank you, by the way, for your comments around the performance. I actually think today's not the big day to discuss performance, what the results show. I actually think that I would want council to spend some time with this annual report in the way that you're hinting at, and looking particularly at the importance of the balanced budget, the importance of where we're at relative to funding our depreciation and our balance sheet resilience. There are lots of good information in here which should be taken forward as council looks at its annual plan and any other amendments or likes that it might be thinking of going forward. So with that, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I would like to move to the recommendations, please, which I just need to go back to. You'll bear with me for a couple of moments. It's the one problem with a diligent, isn't it? So the recommendations are that we receive the report, that we recommend Council adopts the annual report and the summary annual report, and that we approve the signing of the letters of rep by Paula and Lance. From the Chair, I would like to move those motions. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Maxine. I appreciate that. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not being the case, I would like to put the motion. All those in favour, please say.
Sorry, Bruce, you got debate.
I've asked, was anybody prepared to make any comment, and I had no hands up.
No, debaters.
Oh, sorry. There is the, okay, if I haven't used the right word. Sorry, is there any, you want to debate the motion, are you? Right, I didn't think there was anybody wanting to debate the motion. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Before we move on to the climate statement, I would just firstly thank Clarence and Kat publicly for their work. I said previously to them that actually I sensed they were very keen that we get this across the line. I appreciate the line moved out in terms of date, Clarence, but I'm conscious that the effort they put into getting and helping us achieve an unqualified opinion is substantial, and I do express my appreciation. And as I've established, this is Clarence's retirement year, so you won't be auditor next year, and I do wish you well for the future and what that holds for you. Having said all of this, it would be. Oh, sorry, Paula.
That's okay. When you finish, can I just take a few words as well, please?
Yes, I would just, thank you. I would just like to thank James and the two Sarahs. Gary, there are probably a whole bunch of your team that I should really name, and if I've missed somebody out, I need to apologise automatically in front. I've deeply appreciated the process that staff have taken to get us to this point. It's one in which they have kept me and Carol fully informed of process and progress and issues that have occurred. And I was trying to think this morning, I wonder how many times you've opened the front page of the annual report to go through it yet again, to think about something that needs to be done. And I appreciate the dedication that you have brought to that process. So to all staff that have been involved in this, thank you very much. It is actually the first time for 18 months, and I don't mean this unkindly, Clarence, we don't have to worry about the auditors. Although I suspect that will come around soon enough, won't it, Clarence? We've got a wee bit of clear air probably for the next week. So that's superb. So look, thank you to all involved. I do appreciate that we've got ourselves there, and it'll be a good day come 3 December when Council can adopt this. Mia Paula, you've got some comments you'd like to make.
Thank you. Yes, probably I should have done it in debate. I'm not debating the recommendation, though. I just wanted to say very similar things to yourself. Clarence in particular, thank you so much for the work that you've done over many years. I've known you for a very long time. I found it a pleasure and an ease to work with you on audit matters, and I wish you the very best for, sounds like you're going to have a real retirement and do some exciting things that are not work related, so all the best with that. And also sharing the comments about your team. Thank you always for the work you do, and our staff. A lot of the work gets done behind the scenes, and gives me great assurance that I can recommend to sign the letter and then consequently sign the letter. So thank you, and all the best again, Clarence.
Thank you for those comments, Paula. That's wonderful. So thank you for that, people. I wonder if we could move on to our final item, which is the approval of our climate statement for 23-24. Charlotte, welcome to the table. appreciate you guys being here for what I think is a very exciting report. So, Charlotte, I'm in your hands.
Morena, councillor, Chair, Deputy Chair and councillors. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Charlotte Catmer, Sustainability and Climate Change Manager. And today with me I've got Poppy Barron, who is Sustainability and Climate Change Advisor in the team. And she's really led the work in pulling together our climate statement and the work that we're going to talk about today. So just quickly, this report today really provides an update on how we're progressing with understanding and managing the climate-related risks and opportunities that we face as an organisation. It includes the first climate change disclosure report for Hamilton City Council, and we are proposing that we're going to do these voluntarily on an annual basis going forward. And the disclosure statement and the development of our climate maturity roadmap will really help us to better understand the risks and opportunities and to agree the ways that we need to address them. And it's a key treatment plan for our strategic risk, which is a failure to respond to climate change. So we're together happy to answer any questions on the report.
So thank you. So just to make certain I've got this totally crisp, Charlotte, the intention is that along with our planned adoption of the annual report and opinion on the 3rd of December, you're looking to also have this approved by Council and released concurrently with the report, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. So folk, do we have questions or comments for Charlotte or Sophie on the report? I have got a few, if that's okay. Not many, but if I could just run through it. Firstly, Charlotte, hopefully I have shown by now total support for the initiatives that we're doing. You've already briefed, you and Sophie have briefed, I think at a workshop, the process that you're going through to the Strategic Risk and Audit Committee, and I've appreciated and I'm totally supportive of where we're going. And indeed, I think, sunlight, transparency is great that we are actually doing this, and I think that is superb and to be looked at. Probably looking at this, given it's number one, I'm interested actually in the evolution of where we're going. So looking particularly at the report we have in front of us, I just wonder if I could check a couple of things. This is not externally verified, so this report is solely off our desks, correct?
Correct. We did get the consultants who have been supporting us to develop and do the assessment to have a look over it for us. So we asked them to review it for us to make sure, as a voluntary statement, that it was not misaligned to anything that we should be saying, and that it sort of met the standards as far as we could at this point in time, but noting that it was voluntary. So we did have an external organisation review it for us.
I think it would be useful, to be honest, to the extent that there's a chance for a minor modification. I think that should be clear up front. Yep. I think going forward, one of the discussions we should have as a council is whether we should subject ourselves to some form of external verification, because when you get to the bit that I want to focus on, the metrics and targets, they are important, and actually external verification would stand up. So believe me, there's not a criticism, by the way, it's just, let us be clear, this is our report, it may have had a review, but there isn't any audit of these numbers as such. So
we can get that added in.
I'm looking at page 382 in Diligent, which is the start of the metrics section. I like, well, I want to stress, like the report, the bit that goes in front, you know, we're reporting and consistent with, you know, the general standards is fine. Our definition, though, this is my question, of scope 1, 2 and 3 are our definitions rather than the broader accepted definitions. Would I be correct in that statement?
Yeah, they're our interpretation of the way that they're defined, yes. So yeah. There's the technical definitions, and it's trying to put it into a plain English way that makes sense for council.
Right, so scope 3 looks, the way we've defined it looks somewhat narrow compared to what I'm used to elsewhere.
In terms of the list of what we've included in Scope 3?
Yeah.
Yes, so currently we don't measure that many Scope 3 emissions.
Yeah.
We have a project this year to review this, and we're looking at what additional things we need to include within our Scope 3. But historically we haven't had many of the things within Scope 3 that are included. We've focused on Scope 1 and 2 and the measuring of those emissions.
Yeah. Again, I just wonder about the clarity of being clear. Clarity and clear, I'm using too many clear and clarities. I just wonder if we are totally open about that, because my reading of this is that our definition is more restricted. What we are literally measuring is more restricted than those that are on a more developed or more mature scale of reporting, including within the local government sector. So again, I'm just looking for that level of crispness in description.
Yep.
So not a big,
Yep.
thing, but I'm just wondering whether there is something there that would add to.
That is actually explained on page 383 in the last paragraph of that section, just above council's corporate emission targets in blue.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of
right.
explanatory notes
Yeah.
there.
Okay, you're quite right. We are acknowledging in that we aren't yet at best practice. Sorry, good point, Lance. Thank you for that. So that probably is sufficient. It just made me think about our targets, that was all. And again, this is going up the maturity scale of our thinking and how we can do it. It made me think, Lance, about if we have, if we're looking at 2030 and 2050, is it against this yet to reach best practice measure, or are we committing ourselves to a higher level and a higher test at some point in the future?
So the 2030 target and the 2050 target are based off the same scope of the 18-19, which is the ones that are included within here. The project that we have this year, which has come through from the maturity program, is to look at that, and also with the note that we're going to be changing with waters, and we've got a lot of change coming that will have a heavy impact on our emissions profile. So looking at what else we want to look and include in the profile, and how we might also set future targets, because obviously there's a big 20-year gap there as well, and our next LTP already goes beyond 2030, so noting that we need to set those additional targets as well.
Brilliant. No, that's good. And again, look, you're very clear in the report. This is about us developing our maturity, and I just want to reflect on that. And, I'm probably sitting here as a chair wanting to have my cake and eat it too. So, there's a level to which I have to tie-ho a tad, which is fine, because we are on that process, which I'm very happy about. Can I just check one other question? It's my last question, which was on page 383 above the section that Lance has referred to me. We've talked about our biggest emitter is our wastewater treatment plant, correct?
Yeah.
I didn't understand why we exclude it, and perhaps I don't understand biogenic emissions. Why do we exclude that? That appears to say we exclude that from our measure. Is that correct?
We don't measure it annually, because up till recently there wasn't really a standard that could be used to be able to measure it annually. It was a very expensive process to do that. And so this is part of the review that we're now looking at. Because we couldn't measure it annually, it was hard to set a target to then be able to measure and monitor what we're doing. But that's part of this process that we're going through now, is to actually reassess that, because Water New Zealand have now put out a whole new standard around how you can do that.
Brilliant. Okay. Oh, that's good. Very encouraged. Seriously, very encouraged. This is great. This is great for Hamilton to have this coming off its desk and working it. I mean, it's easy for me to point and say, well, what about? But this gets us on the road, and I think that's superb. Folk, those are my questions. Last chance. Pardon? Ewan, you've got a question.
Thanks, Chair. I'll limit mine to questions, and I'll leave my comments to debate.
Thank you.
It's important to follow the council process, I think. Thank you for all the work that's gone on. I'm just trying to get my head around, on page 360, we talk about the financial considerations. Help me understand, as a result of now producing this and continuing to produce it, where do you see the subsequent financial ramifications of any of that falling on council? I'm just trying to get my head around that.
So it will come down to the changes that we need to make to improve our maturity. And so the projects that we identify and that get signed off, that we need to make the change in. So we've already got some lined up for this year, but are all within the budget that we have as a team, and are largely projects that we were already sort of starting to work on, but these helped us really refine the scope and get that right. So looking at education, the work around our emissions profile. But going forward, as the other things need to change, so talking back to the citywide community climate change risk assessment, for example, that will need additional funding, and that will go through the normal funding process. And it'll say it was a project identified through this roadmap, and if we're going to do it, we would need this funding, and it would make, through either annual plans, long-term plans, those sort of financial decisions would need to be made.
So the funding of those specific projects would always be competing with every other project for funding and prioritisation. So to remove any ambiguity, you're not saying, having started this process, council is committed to a particular allocation of funding. It's simply you're highlighting, and you will bring it forward with other projects for finance considerations.
Yeah.
If I might just add, through the chair, Councillor Wilson, it may not necessarily be the climate team's project, it may be other parts of council, but this would provide an evidential base to support any funding application bid, which would then go through those processes, annual plan, LTP. And I think that's been one of the gaps, that we don't have the evidential base. This will provide more evidence.
Right. So thank you. So actually, it's a very good point, and led to another question, and I think the chair raised it. One doesn't assume, though, that for it to be evidential, it will have to have significant evidential substance and review. So you're not suggesting that simply because it's got into one of these reports that we should give it that level of weight of evidential status, are you? Because if you are, on what basis are we asserting that this is exact science or exact peer-reviewed conclusions?
So I guess it's, for me, I take it similar to the signing off of our climate future Te Pai Tawhiti or Kirikiri. That's our strategy to respond to climate change. And there are many different things that we can do to deliver on our strategies. And the same with this. As we improve our maturity, there are many different things we can do depending on how fast or how slow we need to take it. And also, as Blair was just mentioning, there's lots of other projects. So it's looking at the other opportunities to integrate into other projects that might not create something huge and new, but it's just about tweaking things. So we're not saying that this sits above and beyond. That's for decision makers. It's about providing the information to make that decision.
Thank you. So, Chair, maybe a question to to Blair in his role as GM. Blair, you implied that management may look at outputs of work that highlight a particular level of urgency. How will management then do its due diligence as to whether or not the data needs to be peer reviewed before you and management would then recommend a particular project be funded and prioritised above all other projects?
I think this sits in the realm of many bits of information we get, Councillor Wilson. So I think the climate information would come through this is no different to information we may get from other sources against other strategies. And I think depending on the significance of the topic, the risks associated with it, the information that's in front of us, that would then determine whether we wanted further assurance. But ultimately, that information comes forward to this table, to governance, to consider and weigh up all the various bits of information around any particular matters in the budgets. So I think what Charlotte and Poppy are saying is this is one piece of information along with a lot of information council gets, but certainly this information will help us in terms of our greater understanding of our climate maturity. So it's not saying this sits above others. We have a climate strategy. This is part of our need to provide good information around that, but equally we have other strategies and other outcomes, and that all comes together.
Okay.
Thank you. Max.
Discussion was my question.
Oh, I got your question?
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Groovy. That's good. Again, it's great that actually this generates then, you can see already the downstream stuff that comes out of this, which is superb. Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the extra member. Well done.
Hi. I'm fighting for screen space here though. I was just interested in the fact that we didn't, the work that we did around assessing climate risks for council didn't include waters because that was in a separate asset management process, and also how we are transferring, I guess, the responsibilities and expectations around climate as if we go to a CCO.
Right. Charlotte, I think have you got the question?
I think so. Yeah, so at the time of doing the council climate change risk assessment, that was one of the previous three waters processes, and waters was under DIA. And so we chose at that time that they already had clear direction under DIA in terms of how they were to think about climate, so they weren't part of that. I think it's a really good question around the CCO, and I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to understand that, so I don't have a clear answer right now, but that's something we can bring back, especially to our Climate Strategy Advice Group, and potentially through updates on strategic risk around climate change as well.
I think that's going to be some of the interesting parts. Again, I think you and Poppy covered this off in terms of our workshop. Ultimately, defining what is the entity becomes important. I'm conscious with the water CCO, it's not quite a CCO. So there are some interesting challenges going forward about what that does in terms of our reporting, including the section we're looking at, which is metrics. Any other questions or comments folk would like to make at this stage? Sarah, your hand is still up. You're probably dealing with a young man there. You're okay? Good. That's brilliant. Oh, young woman. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm having a bad day, aren't I? Can I check, if that's the case, can we look at the recommendation then, please? Which, if I've got this right, is that we would recommend. Thank you. I'm just going to that, Ewan, which is brilliant. So you'll move that we recommend the statement, and we note that the report will be completed annually. Do I have a seconder? I'm happy to second that. Do we have a debate on this, please, Ewan? You're welcome to make a comment.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I support the work that has been presented. I would make just a quick note administratively. For some reason, in today's report, all the hyperlinks, when you press on an item, seem to go to the report or the attachment, not the staff recommendation and summary, which is really unhelpful. So we might want to fix that. I guess I want to highlight that, like a lot of council strategies and policies, they often evolve with no clear understanding of financial ramifications. And we embrace them, and then subsequently we discover that as we've now embraced them, we have this meaningful obligation to fund them. And I just want to remind elected members that every financial obligation has to compete with other obligations as we prioritise. And so I think that must be remembered. The other comment I would say, when the water CCO is created and is up and running, I believe the environmental elements of that activity needs to sit with the water's CCO, because the entire premise here is that the residual council will focus on the business of the residual council, and the CCOs will manage their own activity, because otherwise I'm fearful of stranded costs and duplication, and that is not in the best interest. So I just highlight those important issues while supporting it, and that, as such, will get my support today. Yeah.
Appreciate those comments. Any other? Yes, Sarah.
Firstly, thank you very much, Charlotte and Poppy, for the work that's gone into this. It's great to consolidate all of the thinking that's gone into this, and interested in our next steps. I do think in terms of council's own emissions, that sorting out our own house is important, and so I'm looking forward to the work that is going to be undertaken to have another look at what we need, a pathway for us to make sure that we do get to the target that we've set, at least for ourselves. In terms of the CCO, if that's the way that council decides to go, then I do think that there is still a need for governance to have oversight and set direction in terms of expectations around reducing emissions. Water's business is the largest source of in terms of our own council emissions by far, and also, you know, we will be setting letters direction through letters of expectation and things, and we also have the ability to put the right expectations in place when we set up the CCO with the Constitution and other, I guess, instruments. So I think, we still need, we can't just say fully put that aside and say that it's not a problem. We've got to definitely keep that in our view and set those expectations, although the way that then that's all measured and reported back may be different, may be done through the entity itself rather than us doing it. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate those comments as well. Any other thoughts? Appreciate that. Well, we have Ewan moving and I've seconded. If there's no other debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Brilliant. Well, that gets me to the end of it, and in the somewhat, apart from sending myself to the correctional school for chairing, we'll do the second half of the karakia, and I wonder if you would just join me, please, in the closing karakia, please. Tēnei te whakairi, tēnei te whakawatea, humie, huie, takie. Thank you very much. I wish you well for actually adopting the annual report on the 3rd of December, by the way, and but I know you've got other stuff today, so thank you for that. And I think this is the last formal time the Risk Committee, oh no, we don't, we meet on the 10th, don't we? I don't have to wish you Merry Christmas at this stage. I look forward to seeing all you guys on the 10th of December, which would be great. Thank you, all the best for the rest of the day. Thanks.